Thank you for coming to our first session. Our first session is Engaging Community Partners by Jenn Bonoff, Sam Sacco, Kelly Powers, and Jameson. Thank you
Great.
so much.
Thank you. All right. So we're going to share with you today a few things about service learning and mostly about community engaged learning with some actual examples from some courses that have just taken place. And that'll give us an opportunity to talk about what's involved in community engaged learning and maybe if it's something that would fit for your courses in the future. Kelly Powers can't be here today. She's been a really important piece of this whole puzzle. And I've got a couple of slides from her that I'll share. And now I'm going to talk a few things about my own course that I ran this semester. And then I'm going to turn over to Jen and Sam, who will go into a lot more detail about their courses as we go through. So let's see if I can. There we go. Yeah. So what is community engaged learning and what is service learning and how are they similar? How are they different? So service learning is what you might often think of as being a service activity, right, with a class, but it is in some way engaged with the course content. It could be a one-time opportunity. It could be a multiple-time opportunity. It could be out in the field at a site, or it could be something the class does for a community partner. Typically, it's like maybe a one-time event. You take the class and you go somewhere and you do some good work. The practitioner maybe comes and meets the students and tells the students a little about what they do. And then maybe there's some way in which you tie it back nicely and tie it up for the students. So it's obvious that it's not just service, it's actually tied to course content. Community engaged learning is much more involved. This is an example of where the host organization, the community organization, is very much involved in developing syllabus. It accounts for about 30% of the class time and the class grade, so it's a significant shift from what maybe you've been doing on a course before. And that is probably the most challenging piece, is like, especially if you taught a course for a while, you have to think about what kind of content you're going to give up to get this really powerful piece of the community. I think you're going to hear about how powerful that can be. These tend to be semester long, multifaceted, out in the field, back in the classroom, class time, out of class time, often involves transportation issues, logistical challenges, and you're trying to build a sustainable partnership with your community partner so that they're seeing lasting value when they're engaged with the Salve. Because the last thing you want to do is have this nice engagement for a semester, and they begin to expect, well, this is great, can't wait for next semester, and then you've gone on to some other course and it doesn't happen again. Now, sometimes you'll hear from Sam and Jen how they actually get into a partnership with a local organization, and it is like a one-time deal. It is very well articulated, but we're coming in one semester, we're going to deliver a product, and then we're going to tie it all up and be done and move on to a different partner, different projects in the future. And again, of course, the key is not to abuse our students' time, recognizing what the credit hour is, and that these things can grow very rapidly into much bigger projects than maybe we had envisioned. If Kelly Powers was here, she would tell you about a really wonderful project that she's been doing. She is one of the instructors for the Psychology 100. There's many sections of Psych 100. She has a section where they've added a lab component, one credit lab component for 3 hours a week. So the students have dedicated time each week to engage with a community partner. And what she has done is connected with the Tennis Hall of Fame, Team Fame, and with the Thompson Academy program to get the students from Psych 100 out into the community. One of the things that she has found has been very important for her in this was to develop a memorandum of understanding, and I have copies of it if you want to see this later, so that it's very clearly articulated what it is the students will do and what the students will get and what the community partner will get, so that is very clear. And having that dedicated time, 3 hours a week, ensures that students have the time, they can make the time to get to the community partner and back to campus. So lots of different ways in which students are involved with Psych 100 is obviously tied to their course content, so it builds on what they're doing in the class. So all the students who are in the lecture for 3 hours a week are also in the lab and first section So it builds into the whole curriculum. Kelly also wanted to point out that the Center for Community Engagement can help us in many different ways. They have a portal, so if you're trying to keep track of what the students are doing, or if they have credit hours that they need to get for your course, it can all go into their database, which is great for us, great for the students, and easier for you to track what's going on. Kelly does some good work in trying to find some more grants to carry out these projects. She has lots of community partners who are looking for academic partners. If you meet with Kelly, she probably can line something up with the course. She's also really good at figuring out like what's going to be sustainable, what's going to be workable, what are the logistics, help you with the transportation piece. If that becomes an issue, she's not going to arrange the transportation, but she can help you recognize what some of the challenges or limitations might be. And then just trying to help everyone navigate that partnership. Kelly just has so many different connections in our local community. You don't have to have a partner already in mind. She can help you develop that. So that's there for you. And then she wanted to point out that one of the key things that she has found is this great growth of our students. So these are often first-year students in the Sacco 100, and this is a testimonial from one of the students in their reflections in their journals about what they have gained from the experience. So it's really powerful. I think you'll hear this over again today in our short time that we have, that our students, by taking on this community engaged piece, the students gain so much from this that they see the value of what they're learning in the classroom, how it applies to the real world. And there's a sense of pride that comes with the presentations that they might give or the service that they're involved with. And they begin to maybe see that like this stuff isn't just something that, you know, I'm a professor and I'm interested in this, and I'm giving you these assignments to learn about this topic. They understand why it's important. My own course that I've been teaching for a number of years is conservation biology. I taught it for many, many years without having the service component to it. The last 3 or 4 times I've taught it, we've made it community engaged. This last year was with the we just finished this up with the bird sanctuary. Walking into the project, I had met with the director of education, so we had some ideas of what the projects might be, but we always pitch it to the students. Bird sanctuary comes in, they talk about what their mission is, what their goals are, what they're trying to achieve, what their challenges are. Students learn about the sanctuary, and then students come back with proposals of what they think they can achieve in the semester. There's some back and forth negotiations with the staff, and we came down upon 4 different projects. The students divided up to, each was identified with one member of the bird sanctuary to help guide the project and guide the students. In the end, the students as a class put in over 100 hours of actual physical work on the property itself, removing invasive species, and over 30 hours of putting up bird boxes on top of the things they were doing outside of class: literature reviews, data gathering, data analysis, writing reports, doing a water quality study, and gave some really nice deliverables, including a presentation to the entire bird sanctuary staff on May 11th. So this was greatly appreciated by the bird sanctuary and the students. You could just see that the pride that they had when they gave the presentation. Again, when I look back on the course, right, because I normally have my typical class, exams, and papers. When I shifted gears into community engagement, I had to find the 30% piece. So that meant I gave my Monday, Wednesday, Fridays. Wednesday was community day, right? So every Wednesday was dedicated time for going in the field, meeting in class, meeting in teams, and working on the project, which meant I was moving up a lecture day, the day to cover content each week, right? Instead, also met with the grading piece, I had to find a way to assess them for that time. So some of it was actual, you know, you put in the time, part of the grade, but also the written reports, the presentation, what they brought to the end products, and multiple check-in points along the way to make up that 30%. So those weren't like easy points to come by. Students, I think, maybe thought, well, like that's nice, 30%. This will be easy. I go and do some work. I'm gonna get, you know, a third of my grade. No, there's a lot more involved in that to show what they know. And in fact, final assessment was really nice, where in the final exam period, they wrote a fairly lengthy reflective essay where they had to connect theories and principles of conservation biology, of course, directly to things that they saw or did at the bird sanctuary. So I think if they hadn't connected the dots before, then they certainly connected it during that process. There are challenges to doing this. You know, the biggest challenge is what do you, if you already have a course, what are you giving up? What aren't you going to teach when you become a community engaged course to give the students the time and yourself the time, because this will take a lot more of your time than you think it will. There's lots of unknowns because you're working with a community partner. They have their own schedules, their own needs, and we have to be very careful in recognizing what their needs are to help them achieve their goals. And then for the bird sanctuary, there's no trolley line. I got to work on transportation issues to get them back and forth. Luckily, the biology department has a budget that does have some funds in there for transportation, so that worked out well. Not all the kids have that. Trying to monitor everybody's teamwork and their effort, and as students go, some students do more, some students do less, and trying to tease that out is a challenge as a professor. Just trying to manage the out of class time, keeping up with all the communication between the teams and between the bird sanctuaries. The last thing I wanted was, and I have to keep reiterating this to the students, was that you can't let the bird sanctuary down. You can't fail, right? We can't fall short. And then just trying to build out a long-term sustainable project with the bird sanctuary, which we have projects going on this summer with students, and next spring we'll be doing something with them again. But the outcomes are amazing, right? The outcomes, and we're going to hear more about this in a minute from Sam and from Jen. The outcomes are in terms of students like seeing the theory and seeing the practice behind the theory. They definitely learned some of the concepts much more deeply and better through the community engagement, and I have ways of measuring that. They run into all kinds of problems, and they have to adapt and overcome. So our adaptive resiliency, part of our compass, it's built right in, it's baked in, because you're just going to run into problems. And then just the sense of pride students have. I'm up here, and I can share at the end. I have an evaluation guide for a community engaged course and for a service learning course. I want to compare the two side by side. If you want to have a course that gets designated as CEL or service learning, we are going to run this through the dean's office, and we'll be able to get those students get those marked in their on their transcripts. So, but that is what's coming down the road. Just like they can choose courses that might be themed, they can also look at courses that are CEL or service learning down the road. So just in the sense of time, I'm just going to turn it over to Sam and Jen. And so then we'll get into questions at the end. So let me hope I can do this right. And okay, so I start sharing. We're going to share. I think it will be on the same thing as well. There it is. Good. Okay. All right.
Good morning, everyone. I think Jim has framed it very well. I'm Sam Sacco, like my colleague Jenn Bonoff. We intend to show you some examples that we've done over the last several semesters that underscore the points that Jim has made this morning.
So we have several examples here, so we're going to go through them relatively quickly. But I do want to start by talking about the RISE Summit that was just held in April of 2023. We partnered with Innovate Newport and Molly Williams. She was our lead contact there. My entrepreneurship class, MGT 255, was responsible for planning this entire event. So there were approximately 26 students in the class, and we invited Roger Williams, University of Rhode Island, and Salve. So we had approximately 70 students come to Innovate Newport for this summit on a Sunday. So that was absolutely an amazing turnout. It was fantastic. We had keynote speakers, or a keynote speaker. There were flash talks, workshops, and it was just a really nice experience to see students from different universities come together in a neutral space and collaborate. So we also, as part of that partnership, we ran a separate pitch competition in the classroom itself. So each student pitched their own entrepreneurial venture at the end of the year. Fabulous Missy Barrio and Molly Williams were the judges, and 4 students were awarded gift cards for their strong pitches. So that is the summit that took place. We're hoping that this was a pilot and that we can continue this partnership and continue to have this summit each year in a different location. So we're thinking about moving it to Bryant and including some of the schools that are a little bit further away.
Thank you, Jen. A few years ago, one of our primary econometric projects was an economic impact study for the Naval Undersea Warfare Center. It got to be a much bigger project than we anticipated when we started, which is an interesting experience all by itself for the students. We ended in the final presentation, which grew large enough that we had to hold it in Bizarski. Senator Jack Reed came, Congressman Langevin, Congressman Cicilline, Sheldon Whitehouse had to bow out last minute because of a committee meeting in Washington with the Secretary of Economic Development for the state. So it was a really big event that showed the students the measure of what they did, the importance of what they did. And in the end, they were very, very proud and felt a sense of ownership that what they did mattered not only to the Salve community, but many people outside throughout Rhode Island. And we have many of the things that Jim has mentioned. You'll see referenced by the students. One side note, we worked with other departments, specifically Liz Fitzgibbon in math, who assisted some of our students with the modeling. Together, it was a collaborative effort that I think worked out quite well.
The Naval Undersea Warfare Center came to Salve University and they asked the econometrics class to study the economic impact of employee spending in Newport, Portsmouth, Jamestown, Rhode Island, the whole state of Rhode Island essentially, and to really determine the economic impact that their employees' spending has on the state. As far as representatives go, they'll understand more of the impact that many, not just Newark, but other companies, the potential they have, and hopefully they will see a growing point from here, that the state will be able to grow, and many companies do have an impact, and we just wanted to emphasize that Newark does have an impact.
It was really cool working with both Dave Saunders and Don Aker. They were very, very helpful throughout this entire study. There was a lot of numbers, a lot of information that had to be gathered in order to come to the conclusions that we came to, and with all their help, we were able to do that.
It was a lot of fun because it was very professional student. It helped guide me in what I want to do in my life, which is pretty valuable to have in a classroom. You don't always expect to take a college class that gives you real world experience in that consulting type framework.
I got an internship at a pretty big consulting firm this summer, and so this experience has been extremely invaluable, especially working with people as a client in Newark and really working with communicating with them and getting the information you need in a timely manner, and actually putting out the report on time too was a really good experience.
This is something we have put so much effort and time into, and now we kind of get to show the Rhode Island officials and Newark exactly what we quantify for them, what their impact is on Rhode Island.
We found over time that our clients have come back to us for second projects, and now after several semesters, even a third. The video that you just saw for the Naval Undersea Warfare Center led to a phone call we received a year later from a rear admiral at the Pentagon, who's responsible for the entire Naval Sea Command. under sea and surface warfare for the United States. He asked that we do the same thing that we did for Newark for five of his naval bases around the country. One in the state of Washington, 2 in Maryland, 1 in Florida, and 1 in Indiana. It's a multifaceted, multi-location project, certainly a challenge for the team. In addition, it was also done during the peak of COVID. So we had the hybrid, partially in the class, partially on the screen, conditions under which to conduct this multi-site study. It was harrowing, it was frightening, but the students were engaged, they were interested, that drove their research. I commend them for their collective discussion and analysis. And in the end, they brought the project home successfully at the deadline. This week is something we did for Newport Hospital, an important community partner, celebrating in 2023 their 175th anniversary. Newport Hospital, like many of our clients, certainly has an economic impact in the community, but they also are partners in many qualitative ways. And it's important to demonstrate that. For the students, they get to meet executives and leaders of particular organizations and realize that they're real people too. That's an important point for them to understand. They also realize that I don't have all the answers. And many times they know more than I do, or I have the same questions they do. And they realize that the instructor isn't the professor on high telling them exactly what to learn and what homework problems to do, but they're a research partner, and together we get to the end. Other skills that I learned beside research and critical thinking are project management skills. Each of these projects, I'll just draw a line on the board and say, here's September, there's December, there's the problem, that's the client, how do we get there? They have to take ownership of it. And so far, it's worked out really well. Based on the success of this project, we'll be doing another study for them in the same community engaged environment for the hospital 2 semesters from now.
So again, we have clients that we do a project with, and then they come back again for additional work. So Sam and I have both worked extensively with the Cliff Walk Commission over the years. And we were very happy to see when we drove into South Bay, we have banners that highlight 2 of the projects that we actually did. So really neat to see. It's also great for the students to see the fruits of their work displayed in such a public way. So we'll get into a little bit about what we did with the Cliff Walk Commission. So we'll start with a project that the marketing strategies or our marketing capstone seniors did. Again, during COVID, it was hybrid, some in person, some online. So again, the challenges that we faced doing this were immense, but the students came out and they really did a great job. And it was a pretty successful experience for all involved. So they came up with a campaign called Cliff Walk Together. And it was to raise awareness of the Cliff Walk's challenges and that they don't receive enough funding to maintain the Cliff Walk, especially as we've seen in recent times. And so you could text Cliff to a number and you could give a donation. And so our task was to create this campaign, and it really did get a lot of publicity, and they ended up getting donations as well. So that was one of the things that we did with the Cliff Walk. I'll turn it over again to Sam, and he did 3 separate projects with the Cliff Walk as well. And we had a couple of one of the other amazing things about these projects is that they do get a lot of press. So they're on television, they're in the newspapers, it's great for the university, it's great for the students. So these were a couple of elements that were shown on the news. We can't get the links to play, but that's just part of technology. So Sam, if you want to talk about your projects?
Sure. The Cliff Walk, as Jen said, we've done 3 studies for them. This was actually the 3rd and a bit different, which I'll talk about in just a second. But it was an interesting experience when we did the first 2 economic impact studies. We combined our project and worked closely with our business research methods class to develop a survey. We reached out to some other departments for some consulting, if you will, during the course of the semester. We coordinated with Salve administration, so the students got to know them as well. And they realized that, again, people did not have all the answers, but there was a thirst to obtain that information. We did a study in 2016, we followed up in 2018. The projects have gone across many semesters, not just limited to one. So we're seeing that we have collaboration with other departments. We're building into multi-semester studies. And we're seeing that the students now are not just limited to business, but word gets out, and we have many, many majors and many departments participating in our studies each semester now. This one, if I may, Jen, this one, the third one, the Cliff Walk came to us and asked if we could develop a grant to conduct an engineering study to determine which parts of the Cliff Walk may require some reinforcement. Ironically, the request came in 6 months before the collapse. Our study was undertaken 1 month before the collapse. Talk about something becoming very real during our class. That collapse happened. Amazing. We had no idea how to do a grant. I don't know how to do a grant. Then you do. I could have used your help. But thanks to YouTube, and thanks to thank God for YouTube. And the assistance of Steve Rodenborn, who allowed our Salve grant writer, Joyce Patello, to conduct a workshop for our class. And with the city of Newport, city council, mayor, director of economic planning, and some other city officials, we were able to put together a grant for the Van Buren Foundation. The grants, all three stages, are about $350,000. The first phase is a little over $260,000. It's received very favorable response from the foundation so far, and fingers crossed an announcement should be made sometime in May or June. The students again found out that people don't have all the answers, including me. They found out that city officials are often very cooperative. If you ask a question, people more often than not will reach out and help you. They learn how the grant process works, how charitable foundations operate. They learn to coordinate with corporate Salve communications on how to handle encounters like that. And they got the extra benefit of being interviewed on TV, which was not only an experience that's important to their professional lives, but they thought was just basically pretty cool.
So another organization that we have both worked with is the Rhode Island Hospitality Association. Once again, the students in a marketing strategies class were tasked with rebranding or coming up with a new marketing strategy for the organization. Over time, the demographics have changed, the people that are making decisions have changed, and so to have tools to reach them. So you'll see here that they came up with TikTok, Facebook, social media, all different ways to reach this new target market. So what they did was they looked at the industry overall and identified trends within the industry. They created the Road to Rehab campaign, and it included both social and traditional channels. They looked at various key performance indicators and then also created the actual marketing material.
On my side, our chair, Ms. Igario, came to us and said, the Rhode Island Hospitality Association is wondering how large the economic impact was of COVID on the Rhode Island hospitality and tourism industries. Great question. We put the class together, again, developed a study, framed the research questions, did the investigation, and conducted the study. It turns out it's about $2.2 billion in lost revenue dollars during the peak of COVID during 2020. Again, it received a lot of press, which was interesting for the students. They learned how to handle interviews. They learned how to communicate with outside parties, and they learned to work collaboratively on a fairly complex, large-scale project and make a cohesive and succinct presentation in the end. This was done in 2021. Rehab organization asked us to come back this semester and find out how far back we've come from COVID. If $2.2 billion was lost to tourism and hospitality, How far back have we come? The answer by our projections is about 93%. But once again, press, research framework, investigation, critical thinking, debate, modeling, analysis, participation by many majors across different departments, engagement with high-level executives, experiences that I think are quite beneficial as they go throughout their career, whatever that may be.
So before COVID turned the world upside down, we would use different community partners in our business capstone course. Each semester, Sam and I co-teach this course. So each semester we have between 57 and 97 students that are broken up into teams. We, in the past, have had each team work with a community partner to create a business plan. Again, COVID changed things a little bit with the impact, saw the economic impact that COVID had on the small business community. But we have worked with several partners over the years. This is one example of a team, and again, it got a lot of press. They were able to work with executives, meet with people in the community, and really be engaged in the experience. So this was with the Donovan Banner, and they crafted the High-Low Wellness Center. And that was to be located in the multi-purpose room on the property. And they had full support of the Newport Housing Authority at the time. And so just one example of the dozens that we have in BP.
This was one of our more emotional projects. The Vietnam Memorial Wall organization of Fall River came to us, and they had secured the rights to build a 3/4 size replica of the Vietnam Wall that's in Washington, D.C. at a waterfront park in Fall River. As part of their presentation to the city of Newport, they asked us again to do an economic impact study to determine how many jobs would be created, what would be the revenue impact of visitors coming to the wall. And once again, critical thinking, research, presentation, press, all that, which I think is valuable to the students. But on a personal note, they met in our Center for Business Outreach, a conference room. It seats about 20. So the class was sitting there. And so were half a dozen or so men in their 70s representing that organization, speaking to them about the Vietnam War. And the students at some point realized that, gee, they're 20, 21 years old. And so were these men at that time, fighting thousands of miles away in the jungles of Vietnam. And aside from the research framework, it became a very emotional discussion between the students and the vets, and formed a relationship that lasted well beyond the semester. You can thank Kelly Armstrong for this one. The question was posed to us. Kelly was coming in as new president, coming in from BC. What if Salve, poof, disappeared, and there was a big hole in the ground? What would be lost to Newport and Aquidneck Island? Certainly, we all receive salaries. We go to CVS, we go to Stop and Shop. We have childcare. We go to restaurants, whatever it happens to be. So that's the first iteration of spending. Then those people pay their employees and they pay their vendors. And there's a multiplier impact. What is that impact if Salve disappeared? Also, we have athletics, we have fall weekend, we have concerts, we have plays, we have student teaching, we have nursing. We have a lot of things going on. Those are important qualitative impacts that benefit our local community. What if those look like? It was important for Kelly to know that, so she realized the intimate relationship Salve has with Newport and Aquidneck Island. And when she went out to speak to community leaders, she would know the scale of those impacts, both quantitative and qualitative. We also developed a lead behind piece, so she could leave that information after her conversations were done with those leaders. The students took it on, Mike Grantham and others were very cooperative. The ownership and pride, again, was evidenced at the end of this presentation, and the students felt a sense of importance and ownership when they completed the project. Here's that project, a typical day in class. Herding cats, but for a good purpose. They know where they need to be. They know what the framework is. You'll notice I'm not the photo expert. I don't know the answers either, but they need to go find them out. And they did. They worked collaboratively. Each of the students has a different skill set. They come together in the end to accomplish the particular project task, at least the completion of the overall project. And it's a very dynamic environment, typical of all of our projects.
And we have one more slide, so I love that we're closing with this one. It's not necessarily a work in progress during class, but it's something that I'm proud of that your club did, so. Let me here.
That was there.
Yes. How can we not have it?
Salve, Business Economics Department has an investment planning class. What I ask the students in class to take away, so they don't have to be Wall Street gurus, but they're going to have a 403B plan, a 401k plan. They're going to have separate investment accounts. And I want them over the course of the semester to learn confidence and competence in the basics of investing, margin trading, short selling, whatever it happens to be. And that's all important. But what's more important is Salve Mercy Mission. At some point when they graduate, they're going to be partners in a relationship. They're going to be neighbors. They're going to be a team member in some project. They're going to be a part of a community that's larger than them. And they must realize that they have a responsibility, certainly to their families and their employer, but they have a responsibility to the world around them. So I have told the students that when the class ends, we have I should back up. We have an investment portfolio with Morgan Stanley. So we don't use public domain material and professional experience. I charge a lab fee of $100, and that's real money after they've learned certain skills that they invest in the stock market through the Morgan Stanley portfolio. The campaign, whenever the class ends, all the money in that portfolio must go to something that supports the Mercy Mission, determined by the students. Because they need to realize that what they do, they need to do well, but it impacts far beyond the dollar signs. The students came to me during COVID and said, Mr. Sacco, we know at the end of the class, Mercy Mission, Women's Resource Center, veterans, homeless, food insecurity, whatever it happens to be. But right now during COVID, this is going on right now. Can we take some of our proceeds and make donations in the manner that you had described? And I was very proud of them, not for the skills they learned, for the people they showed that they are. And I think that's the more important lesson. They did the research, they called the campaign Doing Good by Doing Well. Doing well was the returns in the portfolio, which have been pretty impressive. And Doing Good was the effort that you see behind me on the screen. They donated $15,000. Partially, they restored a good portion of the after-school programs at the Newport Boys and Girls Club. They restored a significant number of art and music therapy programs at Boston Children's Hospital to minimize some of the trauma long-term patients go through. They reached out to the Martin Luther King Center to find out how many families needed meals during Christmas and Thanksgiving. But somewhere around 580 families, they bought every one. And then they taught me about some of the group I didn't know called Year Up Rhode Island, where there are students who have graduated from college, but their home environments are perhaps not as stable as they could be. And they lack certain job skills, interviewing, resume, certain presentation skills that would benefit them getting their first job so they don't slide back into a less than desirable life. They made donations to that group as well, 4 donations. The next semester, the class continued that work. They identified an organization in Rhode Island called Amenity Aid, which was started by Liz Duggan, one of our graduates from about 10 or 12 years ago. They provide personal care products, originally to women and children, all homeless shelters throughout Rhode Island. Now they've expanded into other residents of homeless shelters and made a donation there. This past semester, they made a donation to a scholarship fund for Drew Sepatelli, who passed in November of 22. It's a different type of experiential learning, but again, they've taken ownership, they've made decisions, they've debated the proper use of the funds. And as I mentioned, they show that they're the kind of people that I'm proud to be part of and work with.
And it's 9:45. Any better? All right.
Yeah.
That's it.
Great, I think we have
Thank you,
time for some questions about the courses or the way they run, or maybe a few about your own course.
Thank you. First of all, I want to say thank you to all of you, and Kelly also is not here, Jen, Sam, too, because it's just such fantastic work. And I've done a couple of community things, and I know how much time is in the background and how much you have to do. But I have a question about how did you get the students and the time? Because I know usually students like, well, my class is from, it's an hour and 15 minutes, so it's 2 times a week, and 3 hours. I mean, and of course, they're supposed to be putting in at least about 3 hours per hour class study. Well, how did you get the time, the students to get invested in that much time? Did you have like, you come in on the weekends, or did you have it only for class time? How did you work it?
It's one of the biggest challenges, and I know Jim mentioned that at the beginning. Like, what if you're going to take on a partner? How much of your class are you going to give up? What is it that you're going to do? So it really is a juggle. With marketing strategies, I found it a little bit easier because a lot of things that we talk about tie right into that project. So for me doing that, I think it was more seamless. And instead of doing a case study, they did a real life case study. The Rise Summit was a little bit different. That was the intro to entrepreneurship class. And I did have to give up other things like guest speakers coming in order to have more time in the classroom. So it was definitely more difficult in that. And I know that you branched off with econometrics. So
In fact, Arlene, thank you for the question.
yeah,
Jim and I discussed this, as have Jen and I. When I first started doing these projects, particularly with the Cliff Walk, there was certain content I tried to communicate during the course of the semester and then do the project. Projects got so complex and so involved, I was sacrificing the content to do more of the project. In fact, now we've broken it up into 2 classes. We will have the content, the modeling, the analysis, the framework of econometrics, and then we'll have a separate class for community impact studies. So that allowed us to concentrate in one or the other, because we found out trying to do both, we're not doing either one very well. As far as the students, and I'll be quite blunt, I'll tell them early on, I'm engaged in this project. I have a client, it's high visibility. You need to be on board. And if you're not, no hard feelings, drop the class. I'm not failing. It's not an option. This is very visible. I'll get to the finish line with you, but if you're not going to be putting out 100%, thanks, but no thanks.
I'll just add to that one of the things that we recommend if you're doing a community engaged course is that you lower the cap, keep it a smaller class, because the smaller the courses, the more engaged you can get each individual in the course, and you have less logistical hurdles. Now I know some people will continue to expand their classes beyond my recommendation, and I'm usually guilty of my own, but not following my own advice on that. But I do find if you can keep those caps down like between 18 and 24, it goes much better than if you've got 30.
Yeah, we had 26 in the entrepreneurship class this semester, and getting them to innovate Newport with transportation was definitely a challenge.
And Arlene, if I may, when they're really engaged, they find the hours, they want to do the hours. I'm not asking them, or they just work weekends, they work evenings, they make subgroups and come in at the next class period with whatever they did in their off time.
So Missy had her hand up, just.
Well, first I want to say that I have, even yesterday, as we're doing assessment data from some of our surveys with our students, I saw a ton of positive feedback about these experiences and these instructors about what those experiences meant to their education and how much they learned from this hands-on experience, and also working with community partners and understanding thoughts that they didn't even know existed really before. So kudos to you guys, and I say that to, like, I hear every day about Jen and Sam classes like this. And even about Jim's, who's not in my department, and I have students who would have never even considered a double major or minor in a different discipline who did that very experience, Jim, and have changed their studies. So the work that you guys do, I have seen is exasperating, exhausting, time consuming, and super rewarding. So thank you for that. Second, all of you have mentioned at one time or another in this conversation the challenge of transportation. And I know that we've all probably in this room dealt with it more than once. And I'm wondering if you have suggestions on better ways that Salve can move forward to facilitate that so that more of these types of things can be possible.
Well, I can just say that through my role as director of the CEL part of the program, we've been trying to wrestle with that, and I'm gonna tell you, we haven't gotten very far. I don't know where the barrier is exactly, but we're continuing to push on that issue. I mean, I think partially it comes down to finances, and so one thing that can help is if you have a CEL course, is put a course fee into the course, so that at least your department has a little bit of leverage for the van transport, and then it's about reserving the vans to get where you need to go. I think, I'm not sure how much time we have, but we're pretty much there, and I think Aaron's. But
You can answer this for me later, but I'm curious about how you even approach scheduling your class, or if it's really very much like. We have a project and we have to work out the schedule together for the students.
that's what I
That
mean.
feels really welcoming to me when I think about how would you even plan what needs to happen in the project?
Yeah, I think it depends on the subject matter. So for the marketing strategies, I was able to put modules together. So this module, we're doing this module. So I had some structure. I know some of Sam's courses, they go in with a blank slate and the students have to come up with what it is that they're doing.
I literally draw a line of
Yeah.
support, September, December, final presentation, and finals week. You are here today, like when you're in shopping mall.
Yeah.
Here's the markers. Let's define the tasks, estimated length, sequence. You all agree, you own it. Okay, let's get it done.
Right, and so there's a couple of different ways that you can go about it. You know, it's different, I think, again, with the marketing piece, because I was able to break that up into modules, but. Yeah, well,
We're gonna have to end.
all right.
So thank you, everybody, and I have here.
Awesome.
We'll raise your hand 10 a.m.